I and my sister have been in a serious conflict after she stole my car, and I'm reaching my breaking point. I've been keeping my growing resentment towards my family's disrespect of my boundaries to myself for years, but recent events have pushed me past my limit. For context, I live in an extremely rural community where having a vehicle isn't just convenient, it's absolutely essential. My sister recently moved back to our parents' home next door after separating from her husband. They're attempting reconciliation, but meanwhile, she and her son have been living with our parents for about 4 months. Since she moved back, I've been helping by watching my nephew occasionally. He's a great kid, but my sister's childcare requests have grown increasingly frequent and almost always last minute. After one too many 11 p.m. texts asking if I could take him at 7 a.m. the next morning, I finally established some boundaries. I need at least 24 hours notice, can't do more than twice a week, and need her to respect when I say no. Things seemed okay until 2 days ago. My sister called asking if I could watch my nephew so she could have a date night with her husband. I explained I had a crucial project deadline for a client who makes up about 30% of my annual income. This presentation needed to be in person about 25 miles away, and I'd been preparing for weeks. She seemed disappointed, but said she understood. I woke up at 5:30 a.m. to finalize my project before my 10 a.m. presentation. I'm definitely not a morning person, so this was already painful. When I went to grab coffee, something felt off. My car wasn't in the driveway. At first, I thought I was losing my mind. Sleep deprivation will do that. But after checking my entire property, panic set in. I immediately called my parents, who had no idea where my car was. That's when I noticed the spare key I keep in my kitchen drawer was missing too. After calling my sister 3 times with no answer, I finally got a text. Borrowed your car. We'll bring it back before noon. TX. I stood there staring at my phone in complete disbelief. She just took my car? Without asking? I had no way to get to my meeting, literally stranded in the middle of nowhere with a career-important presentation in a few hours. When I called my client to reschedule, they sounded notably irritated. They'd arranged their entire day around this presentation and questioned my professionalism. I managed to reschedule for next week, but I could tell the relationship was damaged. Not great when they represent a third of my income. By noon, my anxiety had transformed into anger as I paced by my window waiting for my sister's return. Noon came and went, 1 p.m. Still no sister, no car. Finally, around 2 p.m., 2 hours later than promised, my sister pulled into my driveway. I saw the state of my car. It was damaged. The inside was damaged, with spills on the seats and the gas gauge reading empty despite being full yesterday. My sister handed me the keys with a casual, "Thanks for the loan." When I confronted her, she immediately got defensive, saying her babysitter canceled last minute and she was desperate as a mom. She actually said, "You're not a parent, you wouldn't understand." She called me materialistic for caring more about my precious car than family, completely disregarding how her actions affected my work. I told her I wouldn't be available for any babysitting until she properly apologized and paid the $180 for professional cleaning of my car's interior. Those leather seats are seriously ruined. She stormed off, and I've since found out she's been telling our family that I'm being cruel by withholding childcare over a little mess my parents called, suggesting I should forgive her because she's going through a tough time and didn't mean any harm. When I mentioned the cleaning bill, they suggested I was being petty about money when families should help each other. I'm still fuming about this, T. My brother-in-law even messaged saying I was being childish and should get over it because parents sometimes have to bend the rules. Edit. To clarify, this isn't the first time she's crossed boundaries, but it's definitely the most extreme. She's shown up unannounced with my nephew several times during important work calls, borrowed things without asking before, though never something as major as my car, and frequently guilt trips me when I can't babysit on demand. The pattern is always the same. Emergency request, I help, time frame extends without warning, then I'm the bad guy if I complain. The thing is, I love my nephew. He's caught in the middle of adult drama that isn't his fault. I don't want to punish him for his mother's actions, but I also can't keep enabling her behavior. Maybe I'm overthinking this. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, yesterday I had someone knocking at my door. My sister was standing there with my nephew looking stressed. She claimed she had an emergency appointment with her marriage counselor and her husband canceled last minute. She gave me the full sob story. "I've tried everyone else, I swear, and it's just for 2 hours. This session could literally save my marriage. Please don't make me miss it." My nephew looked up at me saying, "Mommy said you're mad at her, but I still love you, Uncle. Can I please stay? I'll be super good." Using a child as a guilt weapon should be illegal. Against my better judgment, I agreed but firmly told my sister, "This is the last time until we resolve the car situation." She quickly handed over a nearly empty backpack, kissed her son, and rushed off with a bling. "Thanks, you're a lifesaver," completely ignoring my conditions. The backpack contained only a tablet with low battery and no charger. No snacks, no change of clothes, not even a water bottle. The 2-hour appointment stretched to 5 hours, with my sister ignoring my texts. When she finally arrived, I noticed shopping bags in her car and saw a salon receipt. This wasn't just a counseling appointment, it was a day under false pretenses. After this incident, I installed a security camera and moved my spare key to a lockbox. My mother asked why I was suddenly so paranoid, and my father commented that this isn't how families should treat each other. The irony is completely lost on them. The most infuriating part? This morning, I checked my security camera footage and discovered that while I was at work yesterday, my sister had acquired another key and taken my car again, returning it just before she showed up with my nephew. No wonder my gas gauge was reading nearly empty despite filling up that morning. I haven't told anyone about this second car theft yet. I'm considering reporting the unauthorized use to the police just to create an official record, but I know that would cause family issues. At the same time, I'm tired of being taken advantage of and gaslighted by my entire family. Thanks for reading this far. Any advice on how to handle this without completely destroying family relationships would be appreciated. Now for the first update. It's been 3 days since my original post about my sister stealing my car, and I did not expect such an overwhelming response. First off, thank you all for the validation and support. Reading your comments made me feel like I wasn't crazy for once. So, a lot has happened since I posted. The situation has gotten both better and worse. As many of you predicted, my sister has been telling everyone in our family that I'm being cruel by withholding childcare over what she calls a little mess. A little mess. Those gummy bears are on my leather seats now, and whoever suggested using ice cubes to harden the candy before scraping it still didn't get it all. My parents called yesterday morning with their 2 cents. According to them, I should just forgive my sister because she's going through a tough time and didn't mean any harm. When I brought up the $180 quote I got for professional cleaning, my dad scoffed and said I was being petty about money, when family should help each other. The irony of him saying this while my sister refuses to pay for damages she caused is lost on them. I swear they have selective hearing when it comes to her. Meanwhile, my brother-in-law had the audacity to message me saying I was being childish and should get over it because parents sometimes have to bend the rules. Bend the rules. Stealing my car and potentially costing me a major client isn't bending rules, it's breaking laws. As many of you pointed out in the comments, this is literally Grand Theft Auto. I'll try to respond to comments, but my sister keeps texting me every hour with some new emergency that apparently only I can solve, so my phone is full of notifications at this point. So I thought things were tense enough, but yesterday afternoon took it to a whole new level. I was working from home, trying to salvage what's left of my professional reputation with this client, when I heard knocking at my door. There's my sister standing there with my nephew, looking stressed but with styled hair and makeup. She immediately launched into this whole spiel about having an emergency appointment with her marriage counselor and how her husband canceled last minute. The usual, "I've tried everyone else, I swear, and it's just for 2 hours" routine. When I reminded her about our unresolved issues with the car, she whispered, "This session could save my marriage. Please don't make me miss it." Then my nephew said, "Mommy said you're mad at her, but I still love you, Uncle. Can I please stay? I'll be good." Using a child as an emotional weapon should be illegal, and many of you called this in your comments. I felt manipulated, but I couldn't bring myself to upset my nephew. He's innocent in all this adult drama. So against my better judgment, despite dozens of you warning me not to give an inch, I agreed, but told my sister this is the last time until we resolve the car situation. She barely acknowledged what I said, just handed over a backpack, kissed her son goodbye, and rushed off with a, "Thanks, you're a lifesaver." Notice how there was zero acknowledgement of my conditions? After she left, I looked in the backpack. All it contained was a tablet with 15% battery and no charger. No snacks, no change of clothes, not even a water bottle. What kind of parent drops their kid off for babysitting with nothing they might need? To the commenter who said my sister sees me as free childcare, not family, you hit the nail on the head. I ended up having to improvise lunch with what I had at home, which wasn't much since I hadn't gone grocery shopping yet. My nephew was great, don't get me wrong. He's a sweet kid. We played some board games, and I let him help me with some simple work tasks to keep him occupied when the tablet died. The 2-hour appointment stretched to 3, then 4, then 5 hours. I sent multiple texts asking when she'd be back. First, they were ignored, then I got vague soon responses. By hour 4, I was considering calling my parents to come get him because I had an important video call scheduled, which I had to reschedule, possibly damaging another client relationship. When she finally showed up around 6 p.m., I noticed shopping bags in her car. Then, as she was thanking me without apologizing for being late, I saw a receipt sticking out of her purse from a salon. This wasn't just a counseling appointment. She had taken a personal day under false pretenses and used me as free childcare. When I called her out, she claimed the session ran long and then I needed some self-care time, without acknowledging how her dishonesty affected my workday. No apology, no offer to compensate me for my time, nothing. To everyone who said she's using me, you were correct and I should have listened. After she left, I discovered my nephew had spilled juice on some important client documents that were on my desk. Not his fault. He's 7 and accidents happen. But it created another work complication for me to deal with. The pages were stuck together and some of the ink had run. These were original signed contracts that I now have to explain to the client. That was the final straw. I sent a message to my sister and parents that I'm officially unavailable for childcare until further notice. I'm done being disrespected and manipulated. I typed that message. Standing up to family is harder than I expected. My sister responded with a novel-length text about how I'm abandoning family when they need me most, and how real brothers would understand the struggles of single parenting. I didn't point out that she's not actually a single parent. She's just acting like one when it's convenient and dumping responsibilities on others. And yes, to those who suggested she's using her marital problems as an excuse, you called it. My parents, of course, think I'm overreacting. According to them, the car thing was just a misunderstanding, and the babysitting was just a one-time emergency. They seem to have selective amnesia about the pattern of boundary violations that's been going on for months. To the commenter who suggested my family has always enabled my sister, bingo. I'm standing firm, though. Your comments gave me the courage, honestly. No more babysitting, no more emergency favors, no more lending anything until there's a genuine apology and payment for the car cleaning. I've moved my spare key to a locked box and am considering installing security cameras, maybe necessary at this point. The most frustrating part is that I miss my nephew. He's caught in the middle of this mess, and it's not fair to him. But I can't keep enabling my sister's behavior and showing him that it's okay to treat people this way. To everyone who said, this is actually better for my nephew in the long run, I hope you're right. Edited to add. Several people asked if I could still spend time with my nephew without doing childcare. I've thought about this, but right now any contact seems to be interpreted by my sister as an opening to ask for favors. I might suggest monthly uncle days once things cool down, where I take him out for activities but with clear start-end times. I never expected strangers on the internet to be so kind and helpful about my family boundary issues. I'll keep you posted if anything major happens, but for now, I'm focusing on protecting my sanity and my property. Now for the second update. I wasn't planning on writing another update about my sister stealing my car, but something happened that I need to share with you all immediately. It's been a week since my last post, and somehow the situation has gotten even more insane than I thought possible. After the whole emergency counseling incident that turned out to be a shopping trip, I decided to take some precautions that many of you suggested. I moved my spare key to a lockbox hidden in my bedroom, and I installed a security camera on my front porch that covers my driveway. Nothing fancy, just a basic Ring camera. My parents noticed the camera when they stopped by unexpectedly and immediately asked why I was suddenly so paranoid. My dad actually had the nerve to say, "This isn't how families should treat each other." I wanted to scream that stealing my car isn't how families should treat each other either, but I just mumbled something about package theft in the neighborhood. Speaking of packages, my sister has been posting photos of her new clothes and shoes on social media all week, while simultaneously telling me she's too broke right now to pay for the car cleaning. When I pointed this out through text, she left me on red for 2 days before responding with, "Those were gifts." Sure they were. She's been making excuses about the payment for a week straight, each one more ridiculous than the last. First, it was waiting for payday, then unexpected bills, then saving for my son's future. I'm not asking for a kidney here, just $180 for the mess she made. Despite the tension, I reluctantly agreed to attend Sunday dinner at my parents' house yesterday. My mom had been sending guilt-trippy messages all week about family needing to stick together and healing rifts before they become permanent. I figured one dinner wouldn't kill me, and part of me hoped we could actually have a real conversation about boundaries. Naive, I know. Dinner started off tense, but manageable. We made small talk about the weather and my nephew's school projects, while carefully dancing around the elephant in the room. Then, right as we were finishing the main course, my sister cleared her throat and made her announcement. She and her husband have a weekend getaway planned at some lakeside cabin to save their marriage and need someone to watch my nephew for 3 days. The way everyone's eyes immediately turned to me was almost comical. It was so obvious this dinner was a setup. My sister went on about how the cabin was expensive and non-refundable, and how this trip is their last chance to fix things before considering divorce. The manipulation was so transparent, I almost laughed. I calmly stated that I wasn't available and reminded everyone about the boundaries I'd set after the car incident. I suggested they try a professional babysitter or one of those care.com services that several commenters had recommended on my last post. You would have thought I suggested they abandon my nephew in the woods based on their reactions. My sister's face fell as she said, "But he has separation anxiety with strangers since the split. He needs to be with family. Don't you care about his emotional well-being?" My mother immediately jumped in with, "Family needs to forgive each other," while my dad added, "Sometimes you need to be the bigger person, son." Then my brother-in-law, who had been surprisingly quiet until then, snapped at me. "You don't understand how hard parenting is. Sometimes rules have to bend when you're responsible for another human life." That's when I pointed out that respecting others' property and boundaries actually models better behavior for children than entitlement and dishonesty do. Not my most diplomatic moment, but I was getting frustrated with the 4-against-1 dynamic. My sister burst into tears, claiming I was trying to sabotage her marriage by refusing this one small favor, when she's already apologized 1,000,000 times. The dinner ended with my sister sobbing, my brother-in-law muttering about selfish single people, and my parents expressing their profound disappointment in me. Fun times. The drive home was when things got weird. I noticed my gas gauge reading nearly empty despite filling up that morning. I distinctly remember filling the tank because I had a work errand that took me to the next town over. There's no way I used nearly a full tank in 1 day of minimal driving. As soon as I got home, I checked my security camera footage from earlier in the day. There's my sister, pulling into my driveway around 10 a.m. while I was at work, using what appeared to be another key to my car and driving off. The footage shows her returning it just about an hour before I came home to leave for the dinner. She had acquired or made another key and taken my car again, even after everything that happened, and then to sit across from me at dinner, crying about how I won't help her while having stolen my car earlier that same day. Edit. A lot of you asked about how she got another key. I'm pretty sure she either made a copy of my spare before I moved it to the lockbox, or she swiped my main key from my jacket pocket during a previous family dinner and had it copied while I was distracted with my nephew. I'm getting my car rekeyed tomorrow. When I called my sister to confront her about the footage, she tried to justify it by saying she just needed to run a quick errand and knew I would say no if she asked. When I pointed out that taking someone's car without permission is theft, she got defensive and said I was being dramatic because family shares things. I ended up hanging up because I was too angry to continue the conversation without saying things I might regret. My parents called shortly after, having heard from my sister. My mom started with, "We understand you're upset," but they suggested I was being unnecessarily rigid about a simple car ride, and that my sister was just being practical because she needed to run an errand while her car was in the shop. First, I'd heard about her car being in the shop, by the way. When I mentioned filing a police report just to document the unauthorized use, my dad raised his voice and said, "Family matters should be kept within the family." I'm starting to wonder if I'm the crazy one here. My entire family seems to think borrowing my car without permission, repeatedly violating my boundaries, and refusing to take responsibility for damages is all perfectly normal behavior. Meanwhile, my wanting basic respect for my property makes me the unreasonable one. Thanks to everyone who commented on my previous posts, reassuring me that I'm not crazy. It's genuinely helping me stay grounded right now. I'm looking into getting my car rekeyed ASAP, but I'm also considering more drastic measures. I've started documenting everything, saving texts, and keeping a log of incidents. If this escalates further, I want to have evidence of the pattern. Some commenters suggested setting up additional cameras around my property, which honestly doesn't seem like overkill anymore. The worst part is that I miss my nephew. He called me yesterday asking when he could come over again because he misses our board game tournaments. It breaks my heart that I can't see him without getting tangled in my sister's manipulation tactic. I'm thinking about suggesting supervised visits at a neutral location, like a park, where there's no opportunity for my sister to dump him on me unexpectedly. This situation with my sister keeps getting more complicated every day, and I'm honestly at a loss for what to do next. I'm standing firm on my boundaries, but it feels like I'm fighting against my entire family, rather than just one entitled sister. Now for the final update. Final update on my entitled sister stealing my car. Is this saga finally over? First, I want to say thanks to everyone who's commented and messaged me with advice. You've seriously kept me sane through all of this madness. It's been about 3 weeks since my last update, and I've got some pretty major developments to share. After discovering that my sister had taken my car again while I was at work and catching her on my security camera, I knew I had to take more serious action. The next morning, I called a locksmith and had my entire car rekeyed. Cost me $275, but worth every penny for the peace of mind. The locksmith was super understanding when I explained the situation. Apparently, family car theft is more common than you'd think. I also went to the local police station and filed a report about the unauthorized use of my vehicle. I made it clear I wasn't looking to press charges yet, but wanted documentation of the pattern of behavior in case things escalated further. The officer was actually really helpful and suggested I send a formal text message to my sister, clearly stating that she no longer had permission to use my vehicle under any circumstances, which would create a paper trail if needed later. When I got home from the police station, my phone had many calls. Apparently, my sister had tried to take my car again while I was out, seriously, discovered the keys didn't work, and immediately called my parents to complain. My dad left me a voicemail about how he was disappointed that I would go to such extremes, and how my mother was that I would bring outsiders into family business. Shortly after, my sister texted that I was pathetic for involving the police in a simple favor between siblings. I sent back the clearly worded message the officer suggested, stating she did not have permission to use my vehicle, and any future attempts would be reported as theft. She responded with about 15 angry crying emojis, and then blocked me on all social media. Oh no, how will I survive without seeing her daily coffee selfies? Despite all this drama, my sister and brother-in-law still went forward with their weekend getaway plans. They ended up leaving my nephew with my parents after failing to guilt me into babysitting. Over that weekend, I received more than 30 messages from various family members, all telling me how selfish I was being, and how I was willing to destroy a marriage over a car. Side note, if your marriage can be destroyed by lack of free babysitting, maybe the problems run deeper than you think? Saturday afternoon, I was bringing groceries in from my car when I saw my parents' sedan in my driveway. My dad was sitting on my porch with my nephew, playing a game on a tablet beside him. I knew what was happening, but decided to let my dad make the pitch anyway. He explained that they were overwhelmed with watching my nephew. My mom's back pain was severe, and they needed me to take over watching him for the remaining day and a half. When I asked why they couldn't just call my sister to come back early, my dad admitted they'd turned off their phones for privacy reasons and were unreachable at the cabin. My dad started unloading my nephew's belongings from the car without waiting for my response. He stated, "Sometimes we have to put aside grievances for the good of the family," as if it was already decided I would take over. I stood my ground. I told my dad I sympathized with their situation, especially with mom's back pain, but I would not be manipulated into babysitting when my boundaries had been repeatedly violated. Instead of arguing, I offered a solution. I would find and pay for a qualified professional sitter to help them out, but I would not personally take responsibility, as it would only reinforce my sister's pattern of entitlement. My dad looked shocked that I wouldn't comply as usual, but the relief on my nephew's face when he realized he wouldn't be handed off was worth standing firm. I helped my dad load everything back in the car while I made calls to find childcare. I have a coworker whose daughter is a certified childcare provider who was available to help within a couple of hours, and I transferred her the money immediately. Just as I was wrapping up those arrangements, my phone rang. It was my brother-in-law. The cabin owner had called them about damage my nephew had caused during a previous visit, damage they had never disclosed or paid for. The owner was threatening to charge their credit card double the amount if they didn't come back immediately to discuss it. My brother-in-law was calling to blame me for somehow causing this situation by refusing to help the family. I didn't argue. I simply said, "This sounds like an opportunity for personal responsibility," and hung up. Yeah, I know that was a bit petty, but after weeks of being gaslit and manipulated, it felt good to not engage with the nonsense. My parents decided to keep my nephew at their house with the childcare provider's help until my sister and brother-in-law returned. About 4 hours later, they all showed up at my parents' place, and I decided it was time for a family meeting. I drove over with all my evidence in hand. With the entire family present, I methodically outlined every boundary violation, lie, and manipulation that had happened over the past weeks. I showed the security footage of both car thefts. I presented the detailed timeline of excuses about the cleaning payment. I showed screenshots of the contradictory messages about emergencies that turned out to be shopping trips. I laid it all out calmly and factually. My sister initially tried her usual tactics, crying and claiming she was doing her best as a struggling mom. But when I played the security footage of the second car theft, she stopped making excuses. She admitted she'd been taking advantage of me because she was overwhelmed with her marriage problems. She confessed she'd been using mom stress to justify treating others poorly, and had convinced herself that her needs were automatically more important than anyone else's boundaries. My brother-in-law looked uncomfortable throughout this conversation, but actually backed me up at one point, telling my sister that taking someone's car without permission wasn't okay, regardless of the circumstances. My parents were mostly quiet, but I could see them processing how much they'd enabled this behavior. By the end of that conversation, my sister had sent me the full payment for the car cleaning, plus extra for the wear and tear, her words, not mine. She also apologized to my nephew for using him as a pawn in adult conflicts, which was honestly the most mature thing I've ever seen her do. It's been 2 weeks since that confrontation, and things have actually improved significantly. My sister is seeing a therapist, for real this time, not shopping therapy. My parents have stopped calling me to fix every family crisis. And most surprisingly, my brother-in-law reached out privately to thank me for being the only one willing to call out the issues because he'd been afraid to stand up to her himself. My nephew and I have started having regular, scheduled visits at the park. No surprise drop-offs, no manipulation, just genuine quality time. Yesterday, he told me he's glad everyone isn't fighting anymore, which was emotionally impactful. I'm still keeping my car keys in a lockbox, though. Edit. Many people have asked if I'm still helping with childcare. Yes, but with clear boundaries now. I have my nephew over one scheduled evening per week, and we've established a family calendar for planning purposes. No more emergencies. My sister has actually respected this system so far. I've also started recording all interactions out of habit now, where legal, of course, and having clear evidence of everything has made it so much harder for anyone to distort what was said or agreed upon. One unexpected positive outcome. My sister admitted the weekend trip was an effort to save a marriage that wasn't working, and they're now pursuing a friendly separation with a focus on co-parenting. Sometimes standing firm on boundaries doesn't just help you, it forces others to face reality too. I'm finally at peace with everything that happened with my car-stealing sister. The situation forced our entire family to confront some unhealthy patterns, and while we're not perfect, we're definitely healthier now. Thank you all for being part of my journey.